another stream of the resources of the Medway Valley. If you remember me from last week, my name is Jessica Chernick, and I am an intern at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology for a portion of this summer, so you'll be seeing a good deal of me. Now, I kept my promise. Last week we talked a little bit more about plants and the invasive species in the Medway Valley and also in Ontario. So this week we are going to do some animals, and this, as you might have seen, is going to be all about bats. Now to begin, we're just going to talk about some basic bat facts that go for pretty much the entire species. To start off, bats are the only mammals that are able to continuously fly. Now you might think, well, we have the flying squirrel, what about that? Flying squirrels actually aren't able to fly. They're more of gliders, so they're able to glide from tree to tree, which is almost jumping fancy, and they're able to just sort of make it between trees and larger leaps than a normal squirrel can. Bats can actually fly around the sky. In the entire world, there are over 1,000 different species of bats, and 8 of those are in Ontario. Of those 8, we're going to talk about 4 of those in this video. Some things that you probably do know about bats is that they are nocturnal, which means they're active at night, and that they eat a lot of insects, and they like to sleep upside down. Some other things that you probably don't know is that bats use a system of not really communication, but really of being able to see, called echolocation. Now bats, they really don't have the best eyesight in the world. They can see, it's just not great. If bats needed anything, they probably need a pair of glasses like me. But how echolocation works is as the bat's flying around, he sends out little chirps, and those chirps bounce off of different objects. So poles, buildings, all sorts of different things like that. You maybe even if you're walking around at night. And when that sound bounces off of that object, it comes right back to them. So it's almost like how if we stand out in a big open area and we give a loud shout, we'll usually hear our voice return to us. But bats actually have a really good way of being able to tell how far away an object is by how quickly that sound bounces back to them, as well as really being able to kind of see what that object might be. If it's moving, it's probably an insect, so they can eat it. If it's not moving, they probably have to turn a different direction because that object is not going to be moving away from them. Now, there's all sorts of different species all around the world. Most of them will probably be eating insects. So that's the ones we're going to be talking about today. Now there are a few that eat fruit, which means they can actually be pollinators for some plants, and some even eat fish, which I found kind of crazy. I didn't even know that. There's also a species, and this is probably one of the most popular. When people think of bats, they go right for vampire bats. Out of those 1,000 plus species that I mentioned, there's only 3 that are actually vampire bats, which means that they actually do eat blood from livestock, but none of them are in Canada, so you don't have to worry about that if you're sleeping out at night going camping. Now, the last thing, just to generalize exactly where the bats live and where you can find bats, for the most part, almost all bats will at some point live in a colony. Others, they like to be by themselves, so they're solitary. And a lot of times, bats will try to find a safe, quiet place, especially during the day, where they can nap, since I said they're nocturnal. So they'll go from anywhere to barns, they'll go into attics, they'll even go into mines, abandoned mines, and that goes also when they're hibernating, since bats aren't active during the winter time. So right about now, I think you'll actually start seeing them waking up and flying around. Alright, without further ado, guys, our first bat we're going to talk about is the little brown bat. Now, the little brown bat is probably one of the most common and heard about bats out there. Their habitat is widespread throughout Canada. They even come into the United States where I am right now, and down south into Mexico. They look like, from that picture that just flashed up, and we'll flash them through again, they have glossy brown fur on their backs, a bit darker, and then on their bellies they have lighter brown fur. The size of the bats, and it's hard to tell with the pictures since they're blown up so big, is if you spread your thumb and your pinky finger, kind of make a telephone shape, if you guys know what that might look like, is from wingtip to wingtip. That's about the size of what a little brown bat is. Now, if your hand's a little bit smaller, you might want to ask one of your parents or whoever you're with who might have a little bit larger hands to try this trick out, and you'll get a pretty good idea. Now, the approximate size of what that is about 21 to 27 centimeters. So these guys are pretty tiny. So exactly what their name says. They are little brown bats. But the good thing about these guys is you don't have to be afraid of them. They won't bother you. What they will do is they eat thousands of bugs. That's their main diet. In 1 hour, they can consume 1,000 bugs, and in one night, it's about twice their body weight. So that's almost like eating another one of you. So what's really good is not only are these guys eating the bugs, they're eating bugs that we don't like to deal with, such as mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are, of course, pests to us. If they bite us, they're itchy, they can carry diseases. Those bats will take care of them for us. So we really want to keep them around. Unfortunately, they are endangered provincially and nationally due to a disease called the white nose syndrome. Now, to put this easily, the white nose syndrome is basically like a cold. If you can't sleep because you have a cold, because you have the sniffles and you're coughing, things like that. It's kind of the same for bats. So what happens is when these guys are hibernating in the winter time, and they should be conserving all of that energy for when they have to wake up and go out and hunt again, this disease will actually wake them up in the middle of winter and cause them to use all of that energy they need to be saving. And usually if they have it, they will not be surviving the winter. So we've lost a lot of these guys to that disease since it showed up, and that is something that affects other species of bats. The next one I'm going to talk about, it also affects him. So we just have to keep our eye out on these guys and make sure the population's staying up. Now the next bat is our northern long-eared bat. Now the northern long-eared bat, as you can guess, he lives up north. He comes into the US a bit and into Canada. He resides in forests. They sleep under loose bark and tree cavities and also buildings. So again, similar to the little brown bat, they'll go anywhere that's safe and quiet during the day. They look pretty similar in color to the little brown bat, and you might not be able to tell them apart other than they have really long ears on their head, a lot longer than the little brown bats. So that's the tell-all if you are trying to figure out what's the difference between the two. They're also about the same size, so you can do that finger trick again, 1 centimeter less, so they're 21 to 26 centimeters. And instead of eating mosquitoes necessarily, they'll eat them. They prefer moths over other insects. And these guys are kind of cool. What they'll do is they'll fly around in the trees, and if they see a moth sitting on a leaf, they'll dive down and pluck them out. Pretty much all the other bats, if you look up in the sky, they'll be zipping around the sky and eating the bugs as they're flying. They don't really necessarily do that when they're going after moths. So that's a little bit different. Again, unfortunately, just the same as the little brown bat, these guys are also endangered provincially and nationally due to the white nose syndrome. The third bat is our big brown bat. Now, as you can guess from the name of this guy, he is actually going to be slightly bigger than the little brown bat. That's probably one of the nice things. Bats are named after their major characteristics. The habitat of these guys varies, but again, they tend to like wooded habitats near water because the bugs like to congregate around the water, and also urban areas. Now, because they're larger, they can have more hair, so they have long dark hair on their backs and bellies. It can also be kind of wavy, really, which is kind of fancy for this guy. And they have shorter ears, kind of similar to the little brown bat, and their faces, ears, and wings are also black with no fur. And I should say that goes for pretty much all the other bats as well. You really won't see any that have fur on their wings, just because it wouldn't be that great for flying. Now, these guys, of course, as I said, are a bit larger, and you can't really use your fingers for this one. So if you want to grab a ruler and really see what these size is, the wingspan from tip to tip is actually 32 to 39 centimeters. So a bit bigger. And because of that, they're able to eat larger bugs. So they eat a lot of flying bugs again, so you'll see them zipping around the sky trying to catch stuff. And they'll eat things like beetles, because their teeth are stronger, so they're able to crunch down through the shells of the beetles. And they'll eat things like flies and wasps and moths. Now, the population of these guys, they don't seem to be as affected by the white nose syndrome, luckily, so we'll have them around. They're pretty stable and are of little concern to conservationists when they're trying to determine if a bat species needs protection or not. So these guys are doing all right. Now, our fourth and final bat is the Hoary Bat. So the habitat of these guys, to begin with, are on the edge of forests, and they like to live near the tops of trees. So you won't really find them in buildings as much. They tend to hang out in the woods. They also prefer if there's going to be a big open field, so maybe it's a farm or just a big field, and if it's near water, again because of the insects, so that they can hunt. So that's their preference. Now you're probably wondering, Jess, you said all of these bats are named after their features. Where does Hoary Bat come from? Well, interestingly enough, it is named after one of its features. They have gray body fur, and their fur has like white tips on it, which is kind of neat. And that gives them the name of hoary. There's a type of frost called a hoarfrost, which is if there's moisture on leaves or fence posts, there's kind of a white edge around it. So that's why it's called the Hoary Bat, is because it almost looks like it has frost on its fur, to whoever named it. Pretty clever, I think. And for the most part also, they have light brown faces, and then their ears typically have little black edges around them too, which is a tell-all. So these guys look pretty different compared to the other 3 bats I talked about. Now another neat thing is these guys are Ontario's largest bat, so put your hands away because you're not going to be able to measure this guy, I don't think. And he has a wingspan of 34 to 42 centimeters. So you're thinking, that's pretty big. He must be pretty heavy too. He actually weighs the same, or even less than a chipmunk, really. Because, oh, those little mousy rodents that run around, they weigh less than that even. They're also one of the most widespread of all the bat species in the Americas. So you can find them in Canada, you can find them in the US, you can find them all the way through Mexico and down into South America, into the countries of Chile and Argentina. And if you look all the way out to the Pacific Ocean, they're even in Hawaii, which is pretty neat. Even the bats, this type of bat that you can see in your backyards in Canada, are in an island in Hawaii. Now luckily these guys also have a stable population, but unfortunately are threatened by something entirely different, and that's wind turbines. So the big windmills that you see on the hills that spin around with the wind. Luckily conservation groups, they are aware of this, and so they have chats with the wind industry to try to figure out ways maybe they can create some sort of like sound repellent that the bats are sensitive to that will make sure that they won't be flying towards the windmills and have a higher mortality rate because of that. So lots of good news in the bat world. So we are going to head inside. That's all the information I really have for you today as far as bats go. And we're going to do a little craft, and I think we'll have a lot of fun with it. See you guys inside. Alright, so we are back inside here, and we are going to be making, and I'm sure you're all holding your breath, of what we're going to make with bats. We're going to make a little bat friend, and he's going to flap his wings around and enjoy the nice days with us when we go outside. Now I've tied a string to him, because originally I thought maybe I could wiggle him and his wings would flap that way, but he actually flies really well, so you can fly him around and he'll zoom about, just like a real bat almost. But if you hold him by the tail, his wings flap really well. So you can take him along if you go bug hunting outside when it's nice out, although he might chase him away, since that's exactly what he likes to eat. Alright, so to make this guy, we're going to need a couple of materials. And to start off, we're going to need our scissors. We're going to need some glue. You can use a glue stick, or if you have liquid glue, or whatever glue you have, it'll work. Just something to stick things together with. Some coloring utensils. In this case, I have my trusty markers. You can, of course, use colored pencils, crayons, whatever you want, just to give your bat some color. We're going to need a pencil in order to trace our template onto black construction paper, which is something else we'll need here. And we're going to need a marker to trace our template onto cardboard for our bat's body. Now, I used a cereal box, and there's a way to do that without seeing the cereal logo on the other side, so you won't have to worry about trying to color all that in. And then the last thing we're going to need is for when we punch our hole. Now, if you're like me and you don't really have a great hole punch, this doesn't really punch through layers. It's good for one piece of paper. You can get a hole started with a thumbtack or something similar, and you just have to be careful. Don't go jamming it in. If you need help, ask for help. And then something just to widen the hole. So in this case, I just used a screwdriver so I could stick it in, and I'll show you guys exactly how that worked. But again, don't be afraid to ask for help. It's better to ask for help than to get poked with something unpleasant like a thumbtack. So, with that gone through, the template you're going to be able to find at archaeologymuseum.ca, and you're going to scroll down a bit, and then on the page you're going to see a a little box that says all kids activities and things like that. And there's going to be a section that has a bat activity on it. So you'll be able to find that template there. And the template, now I already cut mine out, is going to look something like this. So it's just going to be printed on a blank piece of paper. You're going to cut it out. And then this is going to be like your stencil. You're going to trace around it. And I decided to cut everything out because I didn't think you guys would really want to see me cutting out a whole bunch of things here. The video would be very long. So once you have that traced out, on the cardboard you have, whether it's a cereal box or maybe an old shoe box, just a piece of cardboard you have laying around, you're going to lay the bat down, trace around it with a marker, and then, so you don't see that design on the other side, you're going to flip them over, and you're going to trace in the opposite direction. That way when we put them together, the colored part of the box is going to be sandwiched in the middle, and so you won't see it. To draw your ear and your eye, since you're not going to cut that part out, where's my marker? Here we go. It's pretty easy just to draw them on. Right below the ear that is on there, you're just going to draw a little pointy, coney, semi-triangle sort of shape, and just draw a little eyeball there. And then same thing on the other side. And if it's not exactly lined up, don't worry about it. I think you could probably also, if you use like a unsharpened pencil or like a dull pencil tip, you could probably trace over it and you'd probably get a little bit of an indent you could trace so it would be just about the same. But if not, it's okay. Freehanding is a-okay. So once you have those cut out, you're going to have two little bats just like that. And since we don't want them facing off against each other, we're going to sandwich them. Now, if you can see, there's a little bit of the edge poking up here. You can trim around that if you want. For some reason, I haven't had too much luck of getting perfectly equal bats. I must not have a really good cutting game, but you can just trim around it. Make sure they're just about the same exact size. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab our glue. Shake it up so we get that glue at the bottom. There we go. And we're just going to give it a good cover of glue. And maybe a little on this one too. Help them stick together. Perfect. We're going to flip that one over. And we're going to make sure they line up. And give them a good squish. Oop, it's trying to slip apart. That's the only bad thing with the glue. The liquid glue is they tend to slip and slide, especially when it's a smoother piece of cardboard on the one side than on the other. It doesn't have anything to cling to. So once you get that, you can put something heavy on it if you have a book lying around, or you can use the bottle of glue just to hold it down for the time being. Now you will get to see how I cut out this. And this is where the pencil comes in handy. So when you cut your wings out, you're not going to cut on the dotted lines, and you are going to want to cut across and connect those two sides. I didn't add a black line, but just cut across that. And so once you have that cut out, you trace around it, and you're going to want to use a pencil, because a marker is going to be really hard to see on black construction paper. And then, again, with a blunt pencil, you can just run down those dotted lines, and that's going to put an indent, and that's what you're going to fold. So maybe you guys can just see those three little lines. So they're not actually drawn on, they're just little dents in the paper, so we can see exactly where we have to fold. And so we're just going to cut this out. Okay, if you want to make your bat bigger, you certainly can try to freehand a bat. If you want to make it a long-eared bat, you can make his ears a little bit longer. Because remember, they're just about the same size as a little brown bat. But they just have really cute big ears, right? It helps if we trim. There we go. There we go. And we'll put that over for the trash. Now, to have your bat flap his wings, you're going to want to fold the middle part, and they're going to stick together like that. They're going to fold up. And once we have that folded, we are going to fold on the lines that are just next to that middle one. Fold one wing down, and then find that other line and fold that wing down. And give them a good crease, because I think they flap a little bit better when they're creased really, really well. The middle part doesn't have to be creased super well. Just those side lines. So there we go. And you flip it over, and you kind of have like a little tent shape in the middle. So that way, kind of again, looks like a little mouth. So that side's going to be for a bat. I think this guy should be pretty good. Squish him down a little bit more just to make sure. Yeah, it's pretty good. And you can use your liquid glue again. You just throw this upside down so that it doesn't get all slippy. There we go. Don't need a whole lot, just to give a good cover. You can kiss the sides together so they get even coverage. And our little wavy parts are going to face his tail. And just on top of that flat part, give it a good squish down. Just like that. And you want to fold them up maybe to get them out of the way. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to have the fun part. So for this guy, I think I'm going to try to make him a hoary bat. And if we remember, he had gray fur. And you can color him in as much as you want. I always think the coloring is the best part of the whole activity, because you can make them look like whatever you want. If you had a favorite bat, if I didn't talk about one of your favorite bats, you can look some up. There's, like I said, 8 of them, and we only talked about half. So there might be one that you really like that we didn't even talk about. And then what else? They had the black edges on their ears. That was one of their tell-alls. And we can, tell you what, we'll just give him a friendly little pupil here. He's happy to be with you. And do the same thing on the other side then. Sneaky, I'll cover in that cereal box part that I missed. And you can get as detailed as you want. I'm just doing this really quickly so you get the idea. And I'm not really sure how to give them those white tips. You could use paint. That would probably work the best. If you have maybe like a paint marker. Oh, which I just so happen to have. See if that works. I might be out of paint in my paint marker, if that's so. Oh, it looks like I might be all out of paint. I'll have to get rid of that. But if you have some paint, you could probably do that and use that as your white for your hoary bat. And then all you have to do for the little hole is take your little push pen. And again, if you have one of these, it's a lot safer and easier to use. But for the time being, you're going to go just about in the middle. And make sure your finger is not where the hole's going to be, or else you're going to get a surprise. It's going to come out and poke you, which will not feel good. And then just with something a little larger, if you have even something a little better. There we go. Perfect. So we have like a little hole there. Now, if you just want to end it there and you just want to have a little handheld bat friend that you can flap around, that's totally okay. He'll work just fine. If you would like a little extra movement, you're going to need a piece of string And you are just going to fold it in half, and using your object that you poked a hole with, or maybe a pencil, something like that, you're just going to wriggle that through there until it pops out the other side so you can grab it and pull it through. And then you're going to take that loop, pull those two strings through, and there you are. It's already not knotted, but it's not going anywhere. And there you are. There's your finished bat friend. And so remember, you can swing him around, take him on bug hunts, and maybe, just maybe, he'll be a little lucky charm. You'll be able to find some neat bugs out there. All right, and there you have it. All right, hopefully you enjoyed that little lesson and craft on bats. Oh, hello. Now, if you're like me, you might have a couple of these guys laying around. So feel free, you can hang them up in your room. I might actually put mine on the bookshelf back there. Just make sure you do it with something that isn't going to damage your paint on your wall or your shelves or whatever. So maybe painter's tape or something else, masking tape, would be a little safer than maybe putting a nail in anything. We don't want to make our parents or our landlord or whoever we're with upset that we did something we're not supposed to do to hang our little bat friends up. Now, just to recap, remember, bats are really important to the environment. They eat all of those bugs that we really do not like to have around, especially the little brown bats who eat all of those mosquitoes. So if you're like me, getting bit by them, not pleasant. They get really itchy. So we want to make sure that we are knowledgeable about those guys and can share that information to all of our friends and family who might be wondering why bats are so important. Now, they should be coming out of hibernation soon, so keep your eyes up. If you're outside during the evening hours at some point, you might be able to see some racing around catching bugs, especially the big brown bats. They might be around in London, in suburbs and urban areas. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to share for you today. For the rest of the week, Heather will be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for another hashtag MOA Live Talk. Not sure what the topic is going to be, but they're always very interesting. And then Katie will be back on Friday at 10 a.m. for another Archaeology Mad Libs. And I did one of them recently, and they are very, very fun. So go check it out. They're always a really fun time. You can type up whatever word you want to use. And I believe she's going to start doing them on Instagram Live, maybe. We'll see where that goes. But otherwise, you guys have a great Wednesday and enjoy your little bat friends.